Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. Jeffrey Burke here. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to really enjoy this show today. Actually, I say that with everyone because I think they're all awesome. And I think you'll enjoy every single one of them because, we're all missing a little bit of a piece of life around us. And we're going to find those missing pieces from listening and from tuning in. And you never know when that perfect piece is going to hit, when you're going to find it, when you're going to hear it, or where the heck it's going to come from. Because everybody has something to say and everybody has something to share. Life is rough. And a lot of us deal with that every single day. Every time we think that we're not able to deal with it, at the end of the day, we're at our wits' end. We go to bed, we get up the next day, and we realize that we're stronger than we thought we were. But there are a lot of things in our world today that are a little bit beyond our control. Health issues, of course, and even behavioral issues as well. And of course, mental health is just on the edge of the chart these days. So, when you hear the letters OCD, ADD, ADHD, and in my case, XYZ and 1, 2, 3, because I think I've got them all and I've had them all my whole life. I've learned how to embrace them. Not everybody embraces them well. We're going to be talking about that today because I think it is a topic that a lot of us really, really need to be focusing on. My guest today, Alex Principato, is a coach. He's also a creator of a company called Disorder Destroyers. And it's different than just starting a program. And Alex and I will talk about this. Knowing about something, studying about something, going to school to learn about something is one thing. Living it is a little bit different. Help me welcome my guest. Hey, Alex.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I think a lot of times we do tongue-in-cheek about our OCD and things like that. I mean, I've had it my whole life, and I've kind of learned how to work my way around it. But I also have friends that have been debilitated by it to the point where it has actually almost ruined their life, and a few of them did ruin their life.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're living it. Let's just talk a little bit about it. If you had to define OCD, how would you define it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I know that there is a very broad way to define it, but there's so much to it, really. I mean, in its simplest terms, let's look at the acronym OCD, right? Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. So what is it comprised of mainly? Obsessions, which show up mainly as intrusive thoughts, things that can't be helped, stuff that pops into your head. We get about 10,000 of those a day, believe it or not. And compulsions. And what are compulsions? Compulsions are any behavior that's performed, whether it be physical or purely mental, that is done to counteract anxiety brought about by those intrusive thoughts. So essentially, someone with OCD is caught in this loop, or many different types of loops, unfortunately, where they get these obsessive thoughts. They're intrusive, most of the time, if not all the time. And then they feel anxiety and they're like, of course, like nobody wants to feel anxious, right? So their brain's all, well, we don't want to be anxious. This feels like shit. What do we do? Oh, and the brain comes up with this false construct of like, oh, if I just do this or I think this, then everything's good. It's all safe. I don't have to worry anymore. And the anxiety goes away. And so the brain learns that doing that compulsion is what's needed for safety and for everything to be okay again. And so instead of letting the anxiety wave ride out naturally as it normally would, your brain realizes that as soon as it feels a hint of anxiety, like, oh, we have this awesome new thing that we can do that gets rid of it right away. So we don't have to ride it out and feel the whole wave. We're just going to do that thing and then right back to zero level anxiety. And the more you feed that, unfortunately, the stronger your OCD gets. So OCD treatment is counterintuitive, to say the least. So it's a very crazy beast to not only, have, but to also understand and treat.
Let me ask you a question. Is this more of an adult issue Is it just as much a child issue, and is it a lifetime in many instances issue?
Well, I'll tell you what, OCD knows no age. I'll tell you that. And I mean, take me personally. Like, I've even though I had no idea what it was, obviously at the time, especially because one, I was so young, I was 9 years old, and two, I was in like the early to mid 90s at the time. And it's crazy. Even, since then, we've come light years as far as our understanding, you know, methods of treatment, all that good stuff. It's crazy to see just how far we've come in just those few decades. But yeah, being 9 years old, I first began to notice like something was off about me. Like there was something that I couldn't put my finger on, that I was, doing all these little idiosyncrasies that, other kids weren't really doing. And I was just like, I could always tell like something was off with me. And then finally I was watching a daytime talk show, and they had a panel, like a group of like, say 10, 15 people that had OCD on the show. And they were asking them, what is it all about? How does your life look? Stuff like that. And watching it, it was just funny because they were talking about their day to day and everything. And I started to relate to it. I was just like, wow, I do that. And this is all the funny stuff I do too. And then I actually wrote my mom a note on a piece of paper. I said, I was watching TV today, and they were saying that this group of people had something called OCP or something like that. And I think I have it. And so that was like my very first awareness moment of like, whoa, like there's a label for what I do. And so from there, I went on, and of course it, continued to manifest in crazy ways. And, my journey began, and it got really rough and bumpy. But eventually I would actually be officially clinically diagnosed at age 13. And from there, once you have that official diagnosis, it's both a relieving thing and a very scary thing, because you're like, oh, okay, I know exactly what's going on now, but okay, what do I do now? And so getting back to OCD knows no age, you can see OCD symptoms develop early on in childhood. It's not as common. Typically, OCD begins to manifest in your teen years, like when you're going through puberty. And that's because of like the influx of hormones and everything going all over the place during that time period. So most commonly, that's when it begins to manifest. But that doesn't mean that that's typical either. OCD can manifest at any age. You could be 25, 42, 54. It doesn't matter. And we're still learning why. We even though we've come a long, long way, we're still learning more and more every single day. And we've kind of gotten to a point where we realize, okay, OCD has many genetic factors. It can be inherited, but OCD can also be a purely learned behavior, like a coping mechanism. So even if you're not genetically predisposed to it, there can often be some sort of really traumatic event that happens, and your brain just doesn't know how to deal. And so it basically creates its own construct to help it survive and deal with that trauma. And a lot of times this manifests as OCD. So really, OCD knows no age.
As I'm listening to you, it's the understanding and the principles of this situation. You understand it all, and you've really kind of chosen to not only continue your own process through OCD, but to also be there for other people. And those are some of the strongest people that are out there, that are still in the midst of their own battle, if you will, because it is a daily thing. And even though obstacles are tackled along the way, either new ones manifest or other ones rear their ugly head. So it is a work in progress, if you will, like many of us are. But I think it's quite amazing that you have chosen to kind of move forward and help other people. So here's my question. How important is it to have the familial support that you have in a family? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have families that just don't get it, or they don't recognize it, or they don't think it's real.
Oh, having a support system is mission critical. Make no mistake. I mean, obviously, as with anything, it all depends on the severity of what you're going through. But especially for those who find themselves at rock bottom or in a very difficult point in their lives where they're really struggling and having a hard time, there is no shame in asking for help. If anything, asking for help is a sign of strength because it simply says, I refuse to give up. And I found myself in that position where I was at rock bottom in 2017 after going through a lot of stuff in my personal life. And, I was hanging on. I was barely hanging on. And yeah, I was coping, and I was, through an act of God, like barely getting by each day, hanging on to my job still and all sorts of stuff. I was like literally walking through hell at the time, but I was able to keep on going. Now, just because I'm able to keep on going and I'm coping doesn't actually mean that I necessarily have the ability to or capacity to also bring about healing, because getting through each day is a challenge in itself. So I'll tell you, when I was at rock bottom, thank God for my amazing family, because I was literally at the tail end of a divorce in 2017. And my sister and my brother-in-law took me in. I went to go live with them after all of that was going on. And so they were there for me, physically and mentally, and in every way one can be supported, truly. And I was getting back on my feet, and we were rolling with it one day at a time. And I'll tell you, I like to say, yeah, I could have eventually dug myself out of that deepest hole that I found myself into. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't have on my own, but I can guarantee you it probably would have taken 100 times longer. And, people who find themselves in such a difficult spot where just simply waking up is a challenge, help is needed, because otherwise it's just going to either take a super long time, or, you're just not going to get better. And I'll tell you, there are many different forms of dependence. We often talk about independence, where it's like, oh, I can do this on my own, or codependence of like, oh, I'm kind of leaning on you. I need you. We're going to do this together, but I need you. And then there's the third type of dependence that nobody really talks about, and that's interdependence. And that's saying, yes, I am self-sufficient, but at the same time, I'm going to ask for help. And I have no fear of asking for help because we are stronger together, So the best state of being is interdependent, because that way you're fully autonomous, you're capable, but you're also realizing that there is strength in counting on other people at the same time.
Obviously, there's things you could read, there's books that you can read. Do you feel like the most successful journey for dealing with OCD is the actual application of the things you've learned and the actual hands-on doing of things to be able to get the results you're trying to find? Because I think we could read about a lot of things, but some of it we have to put into motion, I would assume.
Oh, absolutely. Knowledge is power, but as Tony Robbins says, like, knowledge without action is nothing, right? So you can have all the knowledge and book smarts in the world, but if you don't apply it, it's not going to do anything, So yes, know thyself, master thyself. Knowledge is power. Gain as much as you can, obviously, but you gotta put it into practice. You gotta get those reps in, because that's the only way you're going to get better, as with anything else in life, And fortunately, for those of us with OCD, we actually are in a pretty good state of being, because unlike many other disorders that are out there, we actually have a gold standard of treatment. And what does that mean? That means essentially, if you put in the work, you will see results. And that's to hear that alone is awesome, because a lot of things like schizophrenia, unfortunately these days, it's just like, well, we don't really have anything at this point. Here's some meds and we're going to, support you and kind of be there for you as best as we can. But right now, there's nothing really to do. Is just kind of hang in there. And that's not the case with OCD. And to just be able to hear that and learn that is not only comforting, it's empowering. It's like oh, wow, I can actually do something to get rid of this. I mean, not get rid of, because obviously we'll manage this our entire lives. It's something that you never, that like as of now, there's no cure for it. It never just completely goes away. But you can get to a point where if you put in the work repeatedly and you stay diligent, you use your tools, you can get to a point where you can fully reclaim your life and get from a point of where this thing has almost full control over you to you having full control over it. And that's where we want to get.
You know, I look at the OCD letters and then I see the word obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think to myself, I personally feel that the letters diminishes the intensity of the actual disease situation. And
Tell me about it.
And I think if people had to call it what it really is, they would understand it's a real thing. Because I think we put letters on things because we're lazy or to make it easier to remember. But I think it diminishes the severity of the problem. That's my take.
It should be called trapped in mental prison disorder is what it should be. Yeah.
That would be perfect. People would get that.
Yeah.
You know, because I've had friends that they laugh about the OCD. They laugh at me, you know, because there's things that I do and everybody knows that I do them. And I mean, they're not major, but there are enough little things that people know, like my key fob on my car. I have to click it 3 times to open and 3 times to close. It's just something. And if I go in the house and I did it twice, I'll go out there an hour later and do it one more time. It's just kind of who I am. It's in my head that I have to do that. And I'm thinking the whole time, this is so stupid, but I'll do it anyway. You know,
and isn't that funny?
Oh, it's just, and I'm a perpetual tracer. As I'm sitting in front of something like my computer screen, my finger is actually in the air tracing the screen. I mean, so I mean, I know I do these things. You know, if I'm watching TV at night and I've got friends over and my feet are aimed that way, you'll see my foot tracing the TV screen. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing. Ignore me." You know, so it's not major things, but they're there, and there's many more. But I mean, I've learned how to throw some humor into my world because otherwise I overthink everything, and I'm constantly in my own head. I'm very guilty of that. So I have to learn how to make it more of a comical thing just to be able to deal with it more effectively. But I know a lot of people.
Tremendous power in that humor.
I think so too. And a lot of people, maybe they haven't got to that point yet. And there's also the shame issue. You know, I have people that deal with this and they don't talk to anybody. I mean, I know, but they won't talk to anyone. They're totally ashamed. And I said, don't be ashamed of this. You know, so I think
call
shame
it the
is an
suffering
issue.
silent.
There we go. And I don't understand that at all. And this is not just, this is across all racial lines, all sexual lines, everything, age, everything. There's people all over the world that I know deal with this. I have a friend that lives in England that has this, and he's got it terribly bad. And he's been going therapy for a long time. He finally found a therapist who himself is OCD, and it made it so much easier. And he's finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but he's 50. He's had it almost his whole life. So you think of the disparagement and the frustration and the disdain and the stress that they've lived with their whole life. And I mean, you get this. I know you do. I'm just so happy that you've been able to move above, not beyond it, but above it, and kind of see it below you and kind of see what's going on and make the adjustments that you need, and also break out a little bit and be able to be that person, that ear, that shoulder, that guidance for other people that may be lost in this struggle as well. I'm very pleased to be able to understand what you're doing and to know you. I think that's awesome.
Well, especially too, when you hit rock bottom, there's something special that happens. And unfortunately, with a lot of people that have OCD, yeah, you can gain knowledge and tools and fight against it, but truly, sadly, a lot of times it takes hitting rock bottom to truly begin to fight and reclaim your life. And, you know, that's my story. I hit rock bottom in 2017 at the tail end of a divorce, and I was going through a ton of stuff at the time. And I mean, as we know, life stress just makes OCD worse. And I was going through probably 2 or 3 of the biggest life stressors, you know, you can go through. I was getting divorced, I was moving, and I was having job stress. So there you go. You know,
the trifecta.
Exactly. Just like a perfect storm. And so there were a lot of other factors that contributed to like how I hit rock bottom and everything. And we can always get into that later. But yeah, just, you know, there's something about hitting rock bottom where you realize, if not now, when? Because if I don't do it now, I'm essentially giving control of my life away, and I'm dying without dying, in a sense. Like I'm basically just imprisoning myself, or allowing myself to be imprisoned by my own mind and have it call the shots rather than being able to live my life. And you get to a point where the pain of not doing anything about it, not fighting, far outweighs the pain of actually performing what we call exposures in order to fight against OCD. Because, especially when we get caught up in these things, like make no mistake, like what we call exposure therapy or exposure response prevention. Exposures are essentially practices that you use to fight against your OCD symptoms. So in the case of someone who has compulsive hand washing, say, because they have fears of contamination, and again, it all depends on what's going on. But just to purely simplify this, say someone has an OCD fear that in reality isn't a threat. Like it's just an OCD fear in their own mind. Like their brain has made it a rule for whatever reason. Like this is what you need to do to be safe. When in reality, in actuality, like absolutely not. That's ridiculous. So in the case of compulsive hand washing, the obsessive thought would be, I'm dirty, or I'm going to contaminate whatever with my hands. I got to go wash my hands. So the compulsion to alleviate that anxiety would be, I got to wash my hands, the actual hand washing. So the exposure would be, once you get that intrusive thought or that obsessive need to do the compulsion, you resist doing the compulsion. And resisting the compulsion is the exposure. And yeah, you're going to go through hell, and your OCD is going to throw a fit, and you're going to feel all sorts of anxiety and stuff. But the more reps you put in, and the more you resist, and the more you practice your exposures, the lower that anxiety gets over time. And eventually, it's not even a blip on your radar. It's just repetition.
So it is a process of also understanding that you may be going 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. You may be slipping. You may be taking side steps. You may be hitting hurdles. But understanding that is part of the process is really important.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in 2018, I took my life back from OCD thanks to an amazing intensive program with the Gateway Institute in Costa Mesa, California. And even though I say I took my life back, it's still hard. Like, make no mistake, like I'm in a really, really good place. I'm functioning, I'm thriving, I'm doing amazing things now, such as, starting my own business and becoming a coach and helping other people. But that doesn't mean that it's easy. I have my days just like anyone else does. And just because I have all of the tools I need to be my own best therapist and tackle this thing on the daily, doesn't mean I don't have my rough days. Doesn't mean that I don't wake up feeling dread because I realize I have to go through another round of shit. Doesn't mean that I don't still have my moments where I get stuck in loops. I do. The only difference is that now I have the tools to break out of it and allow myself to get back to a state where it's not a bother or it's not a hindrance. It's just a mild annoyance, right? So anyone who tells you that OCD treatment is just going to be completely linear, like it's just going to be straight up, like you're going to make progress, you're not going to fall, you're not going to falter or anything, like outright liar. Like, no, that's not how it works. It's going to be, you're going to ebb and flow. You're going to have your rises and falls, good days and bad days. And just because you fall a little bit or you backpedal or you have a hard day, whatever, doesn't mean you're regressing. It's just the nature of the beast. It's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get back up, right? So, I mean, even though you have your rises and falls, you're still going to be making progression. You're still going to be going up, even though you're going up and down, but the most important thing is, just get back up, because you will get knocked down. Make no mistake, you will get knocked down on the daily, but just don't get sucked into your head over it. Just get back up and keep going.
You mentioned that there is learned OCD and there is genetically predisposed. Is there more of one or the other? Does it lean toward one of those more than the other?
I'd say it all depends on the person, really. I don't actually have the stats right now off the top of my head, but it would be very interesting to pull that up and see, like, just how much of the population has it from a genetic factor and how much is it from a learned behavior. That would actually be really cool to look at. And I mean, even with all the statistics and studies that we have, it's truly just a best guesstimate because, like you were saying earlier, there's a lot of people who haven't come out and, said, "Oh, I'm suffering from OCD." And so, there's a lot of stigma and shame surrounding this, as with mental health in general, unfortunately. But that's why I've made it my mission to come and advocate for mental health and OCD treatment because, there should be zero shame surrounding mental health. It's like, would you apologize because you had a broken leg? Absolutely not. So why do you feel the need to apologize because a piece of your mind is broken? You fix it, you heal it, you do what you need to do in order to get better, right? So I don't know. It's just crazy that that mentality exists, but that's what we're going to fight against so that people don't feel shame in admitting, like, I have something that I'm struggling with. I need help in order to live my best life.
I would think that there's a lot of life things that we do every day that would be supportive of any kind of a therapy, whether it's physical or mental, meaning trying to get a good night's rest and trying to eat a healthier diet and trying to keep your body hydrated and, trying to be as active as you possibly can. I mean, these are the foundation for good health in life anyway. So I would think that also taking care of yourself would also be part of it.
Oh yeah, I've seen pie charts where it has little pieces of just like, physical health and emotional support, and like all these different pie pieces that fit together to make a whole pie. And I mean, as with anything, but especially with mental health and OCD, you take one of those pie pieces out and everything starts to crumble. Like it's just so much harder to fight and just remind yourself of what you need to do in order to maintain a good state. So, I mean, it's all related, right? The mind cannot exist without the body, and the body cannot exist without the mind. So, every single piece, not just for your mental health, but for every aspect of your health, is mission critical. You take one piece out, everything falls.
I think about relationships today being so difficult, and people get up in the morning and they don't like the way the other person looks and they get a divorce. I mean, they don't fight for the relationships like they did when I was young. And I think to myself, how many people may keep this silent for fear of losing their relationship? And then when they finally decide that they're going to take hold and the relationship ends anyway, then it was probably meant to end.
Exactly.
Because they need to, how long do you have to wait to start focusing on your own mental health?
Exactly. And, hey, like you said, if you come out and are honest about something that you're struggling with and what you need, and your spouse is not supportive of it, or just, hey, it just shows you that you are not meant to be with them. Because, what is love? Love should be unconditional, right? I mean, that's what we're all aiming for. So anyone who's truly on your team is going to be supportive and be there for you no matter what you got going on, especially something mental health related, because, true love is devotion and saying like, hey, I'm on your team. I'm with you. I may not understand this fully, but let's, read up on it, gain the knowledge, and tackle this together. That's love.
I look at the pandemic, and one of the things I think came out of the pandemic was, number one, that we are not as strong or smart as we thought we were.
Yeah,
number two, and that we don't take as good a care of ourselves as we ultimately should. And the other thing was that it was okay to be visible and vocal about mental health, where so many people suffered in silence for such a long time.
Yeah, the adage "it's okay to not be okay" became very loud during COVID.
Agreed.
And I think that was a main thing that caused the wall of stigma to be broken, was just that period where we were all getting used to being open and vulnerable and talking about what was going on internally, because mental health and like everything that was going on during the pandemic was critical. I mean, we were living in a new normal, had no idea how to navigate it, living with all this uncertainty. And I mean, that's just for your average bear that does not have OCD. Now, you take someone that has OCD and you throw them in the pandemic suit, And you're talking about, oh my gosh, like life getting scrambled, the world getting turned upside down, not knowing what to do. And it was funny because my biggest subtypes, or some of my biggest subtypes, are contamination and checking and various different things. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, I had taken my life back in 2018. And it was funny because I was just like, I literally feel like I just reclaimed my life. I got everything together. I have the tools and everything. And then March of 2020, I telehealth with my therapist, and
I need to be laughing because I know where
no,
this is going.
No,
I know where this is going.
Please do. It's funny because it's like, and I mean, but you have to laugh at certain things, right? You have to. I mean, it's like, obviously this is a dead serious topic, but at the same time, it's like, find the humor in things because it can be disarming. And not only that, but it can be used as a tool to fight against something that can be so debilitating. So it's like, use humor as a way to kick this thing's ass. It's just, it gives you power. It lets you reclaim some power. It doesn't need to be this dead serious, drudgy topic that, that puts us down in despair. And like, no, screw that. You got to have that right mindset, that right mindset. And humor is definitely a key part of that. But, yeah, I totally remember like telehealthing with my therapist in March of 2020. I literally said right off the bat, I was like, everything that I learned in that month, everything that I scraped tooth and nail for and fought so hard for, I pretty much feel like you're saying, forget all that now. And like, what the hell do I do now? Like, I mean, everything that, I learned, and saying like, you're telling me like, no, use hand sanitizer, wash your hands, like, forget everything you learn, go back to like worrying about contamination and all that. So, oh man, talk about living hell. And I mean, thank God that, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, well, not always. I shouldn't say I've always had a strong mindset. It was truly getting up from rock bottom that gave me a very resilient, very gritty mindset. And so I think that alone is what helped me from literally just going free fall back to ground zero with OCD recovery, because I had gotten so used to being able to live with uncertainty and practicing the ability to just say, well, okay, I may not know for sure. I may not ever know for sure 100%, but I'm going to roll with it, give life my best shot, and hey, we're going to see what happens. Maybe my worst fears play out. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're non-existent. We're going to see, and then that's the magic of OCD treatment too, is just that ability of saying like, well, we're not going to jump to conclusions. We're not going to freak out. We're going to wait, and we're going to see what happens. And OCD, maybe you're right. Maybe you're 100% wrong, but let's see. And it's having the courage and the resilience to be able to sit with that. That's where the magic happens. But yeah, talk about worlds getting turned upside down. You had people who, especially those suffering from contamination, OCD, just not leaving their homes. I remember hearing a story where there was a woman who would DoorDash all of her meals, but she wouldn't eat it right away. She would let it sit outside for 3 hours before she brought it into her house. And I mean, that was just one of the few things that I heard. And I can only imagine, how much, I can only imagine how much more severe certain cases and different things would be with people having a hard time with that. But, oh man, just, it was rough, to say the least. Very rough.
So talk to me a little bit about disorder destroyers. Where are we going with this? What are you doing? What's your philosophy? What do you want to do, and what do you want to see happen with this?
So I started Disorder Destroyers because we need more resources, whether it be OCD or even just mental health in general. We need more people advocating for all this stuff, breaking stigma, fighting shame. And that's what I aim to do. So that's only part of what Disorder Destroyers aims to do. But my main vision, I mean, I'm starting out specializing in OCD, depression, and anxiety, because that's what I have 30 years firsthand experience fighting against, right? So that's what I'm going to be coaching right off the bat, obviously. I'm going to be, coaching based off of what I know. But eventually down the line, I am actually looking to bring on more coaches that deal with other specific disorders such as ADHD, PTSD, narcissistic abuse, all sorts of stuff. So consider me the catalyst in getting things going and having all of these different branches of support for whatever anyone is specifically going through. And that's what we're going to tackle. We are going to have coaches that have the firsthand experience, just like I do, in whatever flavor of disorder you happen to be struggling against. And, hey, I mean, I'm partnering with licensed clinicians. And even though I myself am not a licensed clinician, like I said, I do have that firsthand experience where it's like I've been in the trenches, I've been on the front line, I know what it takes. And so nothing I do through disorder destroyers should ever be considered therapy or a replacement for therapy. It is merely support and reinforcement of what is already given by licensed professionals. So think of me, your coach, as someone who's there for that critical extra layer of support that is needed between therapy sessions to make OCD treatment super effective. Because as anyone with OCD will tell you in going through therapy, 50 minutes is never enough. I mean,
Agreed.
you go into a 50-minute therapy session, and all depending on what you're fighting against OCD wise, you may get to like minute 43 before you feel like you're finally, making progress or like really getting somewhere. And then in 7 minutes, like, oh, time's up. Part of the reason why I did so well with the intensive program was because it was actually three solid hours of therapy per day, Monday through Friday. And it was funny, like I would go in and be like, oh, wow, like we're having a little school day. This isn't just like an hour, this is amazing. And having that extra time was, it was just, one, it felt too good to be true. Two, you just get a sense of like, wow, like people suffering from OCD need that extra time because you're not going to pull out what's going on. You're not going to discover the root of what's going on. And you're not actually going to make progress, within, say, an hour. You need more. So that's where I come in. If you have a therapist that you're working with one-on-one, and maybe you have like 1 or 2 sessions a week that are an hour long, I come in and I give you that additional time, that additional support, that person to reach out to while you're waiting for your next session, when you're having a hard time or when you're having a spike and struggling and really going through a hard time. You can call me up and say, hey, I'm going through XYZ. I need some help. I can't do this on my own. I can't wait until my next session. Like I'm having a hard time. And that's what I'll be there for. And that's the core of what Disorder Destroyers is. It's having me to reach out to, and eventually other coaches to reach out to be there for you when you're in between sessions.
I love that. I love it because you can't put a dollar value on the support that you get from wherever you get the support.
Absolutely not.
And it's very, very important. And never diminish what you're going through, and realize that you may feel like you're going through it alone, but there's a lot of other people in that club.
Millions.
And
millions.
And you're not alone at all, and never feel pressure to hide it or change it because someone else doesn't know how to deal with it or it embarrasses them. Well, that's when you kick them to the curb and you walk away from that, because you don't need that negativity in your life. You need positivity and structure and faith and support and love. That's
Absolutely.
what really kind of makes it work. So I think this is wonderful. How do they get a hold of you, Alex?
Best way to get a hold of me or to find me is on Instagram right now. So you can go to @DisorderDestroyers. That's one word, @DisorderDestroyers. And you will see my Instagram profile and just shoot me a DM. Say ready if you'd like to learn more about my coaching programs, or you just want to chat it up and have meaningful conversations. I'm here for you. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
I love it. 2 questions for you. Will you come back and see me again?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Love being here.
I love it. I think it's great to have you here. I was very excited about this. Number 2, if you were to leave the planet today, what would you want to be remembered for most?
Oh, man. I mean, I know everybody says, like, there's a cliche, but I mean, cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Because they're true. You know, everyone says, like, oh, I want to change the world. I want to make a lasting impact on the world. You know, I want to have left my mark, right? And it's funny, like, I went through the vast majority of my life with this mentality, but thinking that I needed to do truly something huge in order to make a difference. And what people don't realize is that even in just helping one person, that can be like a stone that's dropped into a pond, and you see the ripples just eventually go all across and hit every perimeter of the pond and everything. And you have no idea what profound impact you can have simply by changing the life of one person. And even Mother Teresa says, when you can't help all, help one. So never underestimate the power of just simply reaching out to the person next to you and saying, hey, sounds like you're having a really hard time. I just want to let you know I'm here for you. And that tiny little seed can change the world.
I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did today. Alex Principato is my guest, and we're talking about him, his journeys, his struggles, his successes, and all the things he's been doing. He'll definitely be back with us again. His company, Disorder Destroyers, find them at Disorder Destroyers on Instagram. Reach out to him. And thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Remember, you can listen to the show on any platform. And if you want to watch the interaction, go to my YouTube channel. And when you're there, subscribe. Subscribing gives us visibility and gives visibility to my incredible guest. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Alex, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Been an honor.
My extreme pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Be healthy, and God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.